Greetings, fellow human, Missy here. And if you're interested in starting a mental health support group and in so doing becoming a support group facilitator, then I made this video just for you. If you're watching this, you probably already have a good idea what a support group is. But just in case, for context, I facilitate a mental health support group for panic and anxiety, and I do that online. And what that looks like is people who are struggling with panic and anxiety can come together and find a safe space to talk about the challenges that they face and to share coping skills and ideas. So, walking away feeling like somebody has heard them and seen them and understands them, even though they are living such different realities, they are facing similar challenges and they can share ideas. So that's what a support group is. It's about creating a safe space for people who are experiencing the same kind of challenges and struggles to come and talk about those and receive support and help. And it's not about giving advice. It's not about one person telling another person you should or you shouldn't be doing this, but it's about sharing ideas. Things that have worked for one person might help another person if they share that. And just hearing from another person who's going through something similar helps people to feel so much less alone in what they are experiencing themselves. What does a support group facilitator do? They are both part of the group, so a member of the group, but they're also the leader of the group. They're filling both those roles. So that means that as a support group facilitator, you would be the person organizing everything to do with the group. You would be the person welcoming new members, screening them before they come into the group. You would be resolving conflicts and upholding rules and making sure that everybody feels safe and heard. So, in other words, you would be the driving force behind the group. You would be an example to the group, but you would also be a member of the group. You would also be vulnerable and sharing your experiences and sharing ideas and support with the group. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be talking about mental health support groups because that is where my background and my knowledge and my experience lie. A lot of the information will overlap with other types of support groups because there are many, but just to put that into context. Now, just very briefly to share with you my background as a support group facilitator, I was always very intrigued by support groups, but never thought that I would be able to facilitate one myself. But sort of ended up being thrown into it as a co-facilitator and taking over that group. And that was a face-to-face group. And that was for about a year. And because of my disability and relying on other people for lifts, not being able to drive myself, not having reliable public transport, I had to stop facilitating that group. But a couple of months after that, I saw that training was being offered by one of our local NPOs for mental health, and they are called SADAG, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. And I thought, well, you know what? I never got to go for any formal training. Why not do the training and just see where it goes? Because at that time, support groups were very much going online. And I thought, well, then I wouldn't need a lift to get there. I could just run the support group from my house. And I did the training and I ended up starting the panic and anxiety support group that I mentioned in the beginning of the video. And we are heading for our third birthday. And yeah, that is what inspired me to make this video because I have had a lot of questions from members and other people about being a support group facilitator. And this is the point where I need to note that I have got no formal training in mental health. I just have a keen interest. And that is one of the key things about being a support group facilitator is that anyone can do it. You do not need to have any kind of formal training in mental health. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later in the video. I thought it would be really helpful to structure this video in a question and answer sort of way. So I'm going to offer you some questions that I think are really useful to ask yourself before you jump into this. And I don't know what would be right for you. These questions are to help you figure that out. And then at the end of the video, I will give you a little bit of a pep talk as well, if you really are very keen on this, because anyone can do it. I just want to reiterate that, before we go into these questions, anyone can do it. And these questions are just to help you figure out if it's right for you and if it's the right time in your life right now for that. The first question to ask yourself is, why do I want to become a support group facilitator? Now, this is a little bit of a tough love question because you need to have a why that will carry you through the possible difficulties and challenges that you're going to face. It's very challenging at times because you are meeting a lot of new people, you're managing a group of people. You really have to have a strong why, because having a why like wanting to have something to put on your CV, or I think a lot of countries overseas call it a resume, if you're just looking for something to put on there that looks good, or if you're looking to start a support group to make more content for your TikTok or YouTube, that's probably not going to be a strong enough why, and it's probably not going to serve you and your group members very well. And I just say those tongue in cheek, but really you need to have a very strong why for doing this. And to give you an example, like my why is because I myself struggled so much with panic attacks and anxiety and felt very, very alone in that. And I absolutely love that I can be the reason that a lot of other people don't feel that alone, that they feel heard, that they feel supported, and that they feel safe, and that they know that they're not the only person going through that. Now, as I said before, you don't need to have any formal training in the field of mental health. You need your own past experiences, and that can be the biggest why. That feeling that you want to be there for other people, you want to help other people support each other going through this challenge that you've been through. So, whatever it is, there are support groups for so many different things. The possibilities are endless. Whatever you feel that people need support for in terms of mental health, if it's something that you've been through and you know how it feels, then fantastic. Start a group. The second question to ask yourself is, do I have the capacity to commit to a support group right now? Now, the first thing to consider here is, how is your own mental health? Are you in the middle of a mental health crisis? Are you really, really struggling? Because that may not be the right time to start a group if you are needing a lot of support yourself. Maybe you need to chat to someone. If you're feeling like you are in a dark place, maybe it's time to reach out to a friend or a family member, someone you trust, a therapist. If they're not the right one, find another one. But that might be the space that you're in right now. And maybe you could join another support group. So, not starting your own, but joining someone else's and finding support there without having the pressure of needing to be the facilitator. And that doesn't mean that if you are struggling with your mental health right now, you can't start a support group. Just for context, when I got involved in my first face to face support group, I was really struggling with panic attacks and social anxiety, and was thrown into this situation. And for me, it was a really good thing, and it could be for you too. But just to really be honest with yourself and say to yourself, can I cope with this right now? Is it the best thing for my mental health right now? Because through all of this, that is the most important thing, is consider your mental health first. After you've answered that for yourself, you can start to think about questions like, where and when will I facilitate this support group? Will it be online? Will I find a venue? How often will it be? What time of the day would suit me? What time of the day would be good for other people? And then it's important to ask yourself if you would like to be part of an organization or not. So, like with me being part of SADC, they take care of all the marketing of my group. I don't have to worry about that. I mean, I'm free to help with it, but if I don't have the capacity for that, they will take care of that on all their social media. I just have to ask. They have a call center where people can call and they are referred to whichever support group would be best for them. So I don't need to worry about that. And now people do contact me directly, but I have capacity for that. And those are all really good questions to ask yourself. So if your mental health is good, ask yourself exactly how much capacity you have for running this group. And then you can also ask yourself if you would like to share responsibility for the group. Maybe you would like to start the group with somebody else so that you are co facilitators. Maybe you would like to find people as you go along. I know for myself, I'm a little bit of a lone wolf. I do like to do things by myself, it's just my personality. I'm happy to learn and I'm happy to collaborate. But in terms of running my support group, I have sought out one or two people who are members of the group who are willing to help out if something happens to me, if I lose my voice or there's a crisis or something, they can take over for me. But I do prefer to run my group by myself. And maybe you're not that type of person. Maybe you really like to be part of a team and have somebody to bounce ideas off of. And that's fine. That's something to consider as well. What do you have the capacity for? And then it's also very important to ask yourself before you get into this, what is your capacity for responding to queries? Now, as I said for myself, SADC does refer a lot of people to me, but I do just get calls from people who have seen an advertisement. So I have to decide for myself, when will I respond to messages? Do I respond all of the time? Do I only respond during working hours? What is my capacity for that? Do I do phone calls? Do I do WhatsApp? What do I do? Now, I know for myself, it was always very helpful to hear how other groups ran. So I'll just quickly share with you how my group runs. We have an online support group. It's an hour and a quarter every second week, and we have it in the evening. So all of those things fit my capacity to be able to run the group. And that was also considering other people's capacity. So people can join in after work. Another big thing to consider is additional resources that you will be providing to your group. Are you going to keep it strictly on a meeting basis where you meet and that's it? Or are you going to have some kind of WhatsApp or chat group? I know in South Africa we use WhatsApp, but just if I say WhatsApp, I mean some kind of chat group. I'm not sure what other countries use. Are you going to have some kind of group chat? Have you got the capacity to manage a group chat? Are you going to be sending out emails or messages, or how are you going to communicate with everybody? Are you going to send them resources? Are you not going to do that? That's also all very important to decide what you have the capacity for. Just very quickly, the way that my group runs is I don't have any kind of group chat. I only communicate with my group members by email to remind them of group meetings. And then after the meeting, I do send them an email with a whole bunch of information about things that we chatted about in the meeting. And that's something that I have capacity for. It's something I enjoy. It's not necessary, but that's the way that I choose to do things. And then group members can contact me on WhatsApp. I am very flexible with that because I have the capacity to be flexible with that. I can answer messages when possible, but group members do know that I may not answer immediately. And I think it's really important with this one to sum up that when you are thinking about your capacity for being a support group leader, remember that everybody's support group will look different. The things that you choose to do will be very different from the things that I choose to do, and they'll be very different from the things the next person chooses to do. And that's absolutely fine. That's the whole idea, is that support groups don't need to be the same because people are not the same. So, what is your capacity? How do you want to do things? And also to remember that you can start with one thing and you can adjust and change. But do remember that you are making a commitment, especially to people who are coming to you for safety. So it really is important to try to make a commitment that you can stick to. And just to build on that as well, that life does happen, and sometimes people do need to stop facilitating their support groups. And that's okay as well. There's no guilt in that, there's no shame in that. People can make a plan. Your support group can be taken over by somebody else. It's okay. This question is really just to help you figure out what is your capacity to start with, so that you maybe don't bite off more than you can chew and they need to reduce, reduce, reduce. It's just to give thought to that. The next question to ask yourself is, am I willing to go through some kind of training, to keep learning, and to have a growth mindset? Now, as I said, you can choose to do this on your own, or you can go through some kind of NPO wherever you live. And as I said, with the one that I went with SADC, they do provide incredible training. They provide ongoing support. They provide ongoing resources, information. So it's very easy to keep learning because it's all provided. And if you do choose to go it on your own, YouTube has endless resources. The internet has endless resources. You can continue to learn and grow. And that's really important, to have that mindset that even if you don't know, you can add yet to that. I don't know yet. So not to feel defeated by challenges and defeated by difficulties because I can't do it yet. I don't know yet. But to know that that's okay and that you can learn and you can grow. This question is really important to consider because it's horrible to start and then feel incredibly overwhelmed and like, what have I gotten myself into? But if you have a growth mindset, then you know that everyone starts as a beginner. It's okay. Everyone learns. And also to realize that, you're never going to be at a point where you know everything. And that's also absolutely fine. It's actually wonderful if that is your mindset. And I love that about SADC, that they have opportunities for support group leaders to learn from each other. And there's peer support in terms of that. So support group leaders get together and learn from each other. And as I said before, there's no need to have any kind of professional background in mental health. But if you are facilitating a mental health support group, it's really nice to keep growing your knowledge on that as well. So, for example, with my group, we try to focus on a topic each time. Now, that's just the way that I choose to do things. A lot of facilitators will have no topic and everyone will arrive and just talk about whatever comes up. But for me personally, I like things to be a little bit more structured. So we will choose a topic and we'll collaborate on that as a group. And then I will go and do a little bit of research about that so that as we're chatting, I can share with the group, I learned this and this and this. What does everybody think about that? Did you find that helpful? And I will share that information with them afterwards as well, send them links to helpful articles or videos. And it has happened in the past that somebody has requested a topic that I know absolutely nothing about. And that's where having a growth mindset helps because I can say, okay, I know nothing about this yet. I'm going to find out. And it's also not my job to know. It's not my job to educate anybody. But that's just the way that I choose to do things. I choose to have a little bit of knowledge to be able to share with everybody. And it's not coming from a place of I know better. It's just coming from a place of I found this out. I found this interesting. Maybe this will help. So again, empathy, understanding, sharing, but not advice. The next question to ask yourself is, am I okay with being both a member and the leader of the group? So as a member, you need to be comfortable with being vulnerable with your group. You need to lead by example. In order to create a safe space, you need to also be a safe space for people. So you need to show them that you trust them enough to be vulnerable with them so that they will be vulnerable with you and be vulnerable with each other. And I think often people think that as a support group facilitator, you need to be the strong one. You need to be the person who is always okay. And that's absolutely not true. You can come to your group and say, well, I've had a really rough week. Things have been bad. This happened and that happened. Just as your group members would come and share. That's the way that things should be. And also to feel completely okay about sharing when things are going really well, because that's encouraging to people. For me personally, my support group has carried me through some really difficult times. I have been there to support and encourage other people, but I've also allowed myself to be supported and encouraged. So that's all part of being a member of your group. As the support group facilitator, you also need to be the leader of the group. And that means leading by example and making sure that the space is safe for everybody. And the way that you can do that is by having some rules in place. And these are rules that you feel are non negotiable in terms of your group, and maybe also rules that the members have suggested. So it can be a very collaborative process so that everybody buys in to the rules. To give you some examples, because we run our group through SADC, there are some cardinal rules that SADC says that all support groups need to have that are run through them. So that is that we do not allow under 18s and we have no kind of religious affiliation. And that's really just to make sure that everybody's included. So that means that there will be no prayers or Bible readings, things like that in the group, so that everybody feels welcome and safe, regardless of their religious affiliations. And then the third cardinal rule is that it is voluntary and that we will not receive any kind of monetary compensation for facilitating our group. Now, above and beyond that, we are free to make any rules that work for our groups. So, some examples from my group would be that we make sure that the conversation is fair. So, everybody should be given a turn to participate if they want to. And we also don't force anybody to participate. So, because we are a group of anxious people, people may choose to just listen. People may choose to interact in the chat, or people may choose to speak. But if they choose to speak, the rule is that nobody dominates the conversation, that we all have a turn. Other examples are that people won't have a conversation in the chat that's not related to what we are actually talking about in the meeting. So, no side conversations. And that if somebody wants to speak, they will raise their hand so that we know that they would like to have a turn. And the reason for that is when you're in an online meeting, it can be very confusing if everybody's just talking, everybody can be talking over each other. Another rule of our support group is that our group does not replace therapy, and that if anybody is going through a crisis, they need to contact SADC and not the support group facilitator. The next thing to ask yourself is, am I okay with the fact that people are going to come and go? Now, support groups obviously serve a very specific purpose, and people are going to come to the group and get different things from the group. And they're going to keep coming back as long as they need what they are coming for. So it's very important to remember that sometimes you may have nobody arriving for your support group meeting, and other times you may have a very full group. Maybe you'll have 10 to 12 people. Anything more than about 14 is probably too big for a support group. So anything between that, if you are having one person, you can have a fantastic conversation. If you are having 14 people, they can support and empathize with each other. And all of that and everything in between is absolutely fine. But the key here is to not take it personally when people don't come every time, or when they stop coming, or when they inquire and then don't ever come. That's fine. It's absolutely fine, because the point is that you are there. You are there with the doors open, inviting people in, doing your best to make people feel safe and heard and supported, and they are going to come for what they need. You and the way that you do things are obviously not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but that will be a very, very tiny part, if any, of why people end up not coming back. Next, you can ask yourself, am I already an empathetic and attentive listener? And if not that much, am I willing to work on that? So, this again relates back to the growth mindset, but just to know that this is one of the most important things as a support group facilitator, is being able to listen empathetically, kindly, attentively. And that means that you'll need to develop skills like being able to mirror back what somebody said, being able to empathize with them and communicate that with them, being able to keep a conversation going, being able to help people feel safe and feel heard. It's being able to give feedback and to paraphrase what somebody just said and to ask curious and kind questions to keep the conversation going, and to do all of that without giving advice. So, to give an example of this, if somebody in my group were to share that they had had a really hard day and something really bad had happened to them, so for example, like a really bad panic attack at work, my first response wouldn't be to say, well, did you do that? Or did you do this? Or, next time you should try this. That's advice. That's trying to tell somebody what to do. That's not empathizing. So instead of that, I would first of all tell them how incredibly sorry I am, because I would be very sorry that that had happened to someone, because I can relate. And then I would ask curious questions. If it seemed like they'd like to talk about it some more, I would say, wow, where were you when this happened? Did you have anybody with you? What did you do after that? How did you feel the rest of the day? So, just questions to help the person process what happened and share with the group if they feel comfortable. And obviously, I would always say, if you're comfortable, would you mind telling us how you felt afterwards? So, I would phrase it in that way. And then to open it up to the group and reflect back and say, wow, so and so has just told us this experience they had. Can anybody else relate to that? Has anybody else had an experience like that? And allow the group to share. And then maybe later on say, has anybody found anything that's been really helpful to them when they've been through these situations? And giving people the opportunity to share things that have worked for them. And then the person who originally shared may want to try one of those things, but nobody is advising them. Nobody's saying you should do this. We all just getting together and sharing ideas. So that's what I mean with this question is, are you willing to build those skills of empathetic listening, of reflecting back, of good communication? The last question to think about is, am I okay with learning as I go, being flexible, and figuring out what works for me and my group? Now, this relates back to having a growth mindset, but it's also just very much about flexibility. As time goes on, your needs are going to change, your group's needs are going to change. Can you be flexible? Can you adjust to that? And also to be okay with developing your own style. The fact that you are a unique person and you are going to facilitate your group in a very unique way. It's also important to remember that things are not always going to go as planned. You might have planned a topic and maybe within half an hour it's been talked out. Maybe nobody has anything more to say on that topic, and you're going to have to very quickly be flexible and think about something else. And maybe people showed an interest during that topic on something that relates to that. Maybe you can start talking about that. It's very important to be curious in this whole process. How can I adjust? How can things change? How can things be better? How can I do things in a way that works for me and works for my group? And that means not being critical of yourself the whole time. And it also means not comparing yourself, but instead absorbing information from people around you, from things that you're reading or seeing, absorbing the things that help you and improving as you can, but not comparing. Some unique things that we do in our group is, because we are anxious people, we don't require that our cameras are on during meetings. So most people choose to have them off and we just have a voice chat. And I found for anxious people that's a lot less intimidating. And also the fact that nobody is forced to speak. That's the opposite to what a lot of support groups will encourage. A lot of support groups will rather encourage cameras on, and they will rather encourage everybody to share in every meeting. But we encourage the opposite of that because our group is a mental health support group for panic and anxiety. And having your camera on and knowing that at some point in the meeting you will have to share is very anxiety inducing. So that's what we want to avoid in our group. We don't want people to feel anxious, we want them to feel safe. And I always tell people when they join the group that I will never call your name and just out of nowhere ask you to contribute to the conversation. It will always be somebody's choice whether they want to contribute or not. And that ends up working out really well because people are not feeling forced. They find courage to contribute and to join in because they feel so safe and they hear other people choosing to join in and contribute. So they feel safe enough to do that as well. Another thing that's encouraged in our group is, obviously with your microphone off, feel free to fidget. Because we are anxious people, it helps to fidget. Draw a picture, color something in, drink a cup of tea, anything that's going to make you feel safer and more comfortable. And another thing that's encouraged in our group is to leave if you are feeling triggered or unsafe, or if something is just feeling like it's too much for you to hear right now, because support groups can touch on very difficult topics and very difficult conversations can happen sometimes. And if somebody leaves, they're encouraged to reach out afterwards, or I will reach out to them. Now, those were a lot of very self reflective questions, and they weren't meant to discourage you in any way. And I hope that they didn't. I hope that they just got you thinking about your unique situation and maybe gave you a little bit more insight into some of the things to consider about being a support group facilitator, what it entails. Now, I want to really encourage you. If you are really keen on this, but you feel like fear is getting in your way, please don't let fear get in your way. And I know that's easy to say, but what's on the other side of fear is so worth it. And If you're feeling like fear is getting in your way constantly, work with a life coach. Work with somebody who can help you get through those fears and reach your dreams and go for your goals. So, to help a little bit with those fears, here is the pep talk that I promised you. So, if you're worried that you are not qualified, that you are not knowledgeable enough, that you're not experienced enough, please put that fear down. As I said before, the only thing that you need to start a support group is preferably some personal experience. People do start support groups for things that they maybe don't have that much experience in because they see a need. But generally, for a mental health support group, you are going to start a group for something that you have experience of. It can be absolutely anything. And as I said before, you could still be struggling with that and start a support group because the group would be just as much for you as for everybody else because you are a member of that group. And with your growth mindset, with your why, you can gain more information. You can gain more knowledge. You can gain skills as a facilitator, but you don't need any actual qualification to do this. Training is wonderful. Again, growth mindset. Go for anything like that because nobody can take that away from you. And lacking experience, everybody has to start somewhere. Everybody is new at something at some point, and that's fine. Now, maybe you are socially anxious, or you're afraid of meeting new people, or you're afraid of public speaking. Those are all very big fears, and they are valid, but please don't let them get in your way. If you want this badly enough, you will be able to move out of your comfort zone. And it's not going to be easy, but you can do it. You will learn as you go, and it will be more than okay if you give yourself grace throughout the process. As I said before, I was pulled into my first support group during quite severe anxiety and panic attacks and social anxiety. And even my current support group, when I started, I remember feeling extremely anxious before the first couple of meetings because to me it felt like public speaking, which is something I was really, really anxious about. I always have been. I think a lot of people are very anxious about public speaking. And I know, a lot of people think of public speaking as a room full of people, but to me, speaking to anything more than two or three people feels like public speaking. So I can relate to that fear. I understand, but you are going to be okay. You can do it. The last kind of fear that I want to talk about is the fear of it not being right, of it not being good enough. And I want you to keep in mind here that if you feel passionately about this, nobody can do it the way that you can do it. So there can be other support groups, like for example, with my group, there can be other panic and anxiety support groups, but those people do it in their unique way, and I do it in my unique way. And there are going to be people who really feel safe and heard and helped and supported in someone else's group. And there are going to be some that feel that way in my group. And it's going to be because I do things the unique way that I do, or somebody else does them in the unique way that they do. A way to think about this is that if you play it safe and you make your group as generic as possible, so as palatable to as many people as possible, the response is going to be very meh. People are going to come and they're going to think, this is okay. But if you are yourself, if you are uniquely you, if you do things as you uniquely do them, if you collaborate with your group in a way that is uniquely you, if you build something that feels like a team effort with you as the leader, with your unique take on things, with your unique touch on everything, with your unique leadership and facilitation style, you are going to have people there who love being there. And people who don't will find somewhere else to be that suits them better, that suits their needs and their personality better. So, in other words, there's no right or wrong. There's no not good enough. Because if you are being yourself, if you are being who you uniquely are, if you're creating something special, people will want to be there. You will make a huge difference in people's lives. If you have any questions about starting a mental health support group or becoming a mental health support group facilitator, I would love to hear those questions and I would love to help with them if I can. So please leave them in the comments. If you've gained anything from this video, please leave a like. And if you'd like to see more from me, please subscribe so that you don't miss out. And if you're interested in working with me as your life coach, I turn warriors into warriors, and there's more information on that in the description below. Until next time, remember that you, fellow human, can make the world a better place by helping other fellow humans feel safe and heard.